Hello, folks. I welcome you to another great edition of Homo Politicus, the one program, of course, where we get to exfoliate very important topical issues and, of course, make sense out of them. My name is Henry Igwebike. Today, interestingly, we are going to be talking and, of course, having a conversation on a very important issue. Today is the day where equality, dignity, and justice for all is and remains the theme for the 2024 International Human Rights Day. But let's not forget, December 10th marks Human Rights Day, commemorating the adoption of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights UDHR by the United Nations General Assembly in 1948. The UDHR empowers individuals worldwide. It is our collective responsibility to uphold our own rights and those of others, promoting the inherent dignity and kinship of all human beings. In 1948 particularly, UNESCO pioneered the promotion of the UDHR, integrating it into their global efforts through education and the media. Today, however, as conflicts and crises escalate, Human Rights Day serves as a poignant reminder of our unwavering commitment to a shared vision of humanity, rooted in universal values. The protection of fundamental human rights is very crucial as their erosion imperils societies worldwide. For 75 years, ladies and gentlemen, UNESCO has steadfastly protected and promoted human rights and dignity, a testament to the enduring importance of this very great mission. We have today Emeka Madunago to take us through on all that we are going to be having a conversation with. Thank you so very much, Emeka. We truly do appreciate you.
Yeah.
Yes, so let's talk about Human Rights Day. Of course, it's one day in the global calendar that's been earmarked for remembering, of course, celebrating, at the same time, conscientizing the world. But I think it's very important we domesticate this particular, interesting day to the Nigerian, issue. A couple of days back, not just a couple of days, hours back, we had Dele Faotimi, who is still held, and of course there are lots of other things that have gone, but I want you to speak to this human right as against what we have today in Nigeria. Do we really still have human rights in Nigeria respected and obeyed, or are we still trickling back to the days of military dictatorship?
Thank you very much. You see, the abuse of human rights still remains a major problem in Nigeria today, even with the exit of the military. We still have people who abuse state power. They use state power. They use institutions of state, security agencies to abduct individuals, and sometimes keep them incommunicado. There was a case of Segun Olatunji, a journalist, who was abducted by some soldiers, and kept incommunicado. It was until after a huge public outcry that the Defense Intelligence Agency admitted that they had him in their custody on the prompting of the Chief of Staff to President Bola Tinubu, Femi Gbajabiamila. Then, of course, just a few days ago, a journalist, based in Umuahia, narrated how some policemen from Abuja, got to Umuahia and tried to arrest him and whisk him to Abuja, on the prompting of an individual for alleged defamation. Now, you see the problem in Nigeria is this: the lack of, adherence, to laws, and the impunity which has come to be a hallmark of state power in Nigeria has emboldened, state agents to think they can trample on the rights of people, hiding behind laws. The Cybercrime Act, which of course, is being contested, that why in a democracy, why should you have a Cybercrime Act? You already have the Anti-Terrorism Act. Why do you need a Cybercrime Act? I remember a former president of Ghana, after his inauguration, he scrapped that act. The other that the act should be scrapped. So that's one of the reasons why Ghana is regarded more highly in terms of observance of democracy than Nigeria. So, now, it has come to the point that, the police now use the laws, the police, not just police, the DSS, the military, name it, even civil defense, SICDC, use the laws to trample on citizens' rights. They are too eager, security agents are too eager, to be of service to individuals, and especially in settling personal scores. That is very unfortunate.
But is it possible, maybe we mirror this to the economic, dead streets in Nigeria? Could we relate it to that? Because if those who should be upholding some of these human rights are not, because of they have been sent by some of the people, is it possible to say they are in adherence of their rules of engagement, or is it because of the economic situation we found ourselves?
No, well, you also find out that if you bring in the economic angle, the way people's properties are demolished on a whim by all kinds of agencies, you go to the markets, you see how state agents seize, the goods of traders on one, for one reason or the other, they arrest, you see how they arrest the street vendors, who, by the way, have been forced into such, such way of life, having to sell on the streets, running after moving car vehicles, risking their lives. It's due to the excruciating economic condition, the looting of the treasury by members of successive governments, anti-people policies of, successive governments. Now, you find out that, state agents, also routinely just go out, raid people. I learned that, the police these days, they just, they just go randomly, and pick people on the streets around 11 p.m., midnight and all that. The last time we heard about such a thing was under the military administration of Muhammadu Buhari, where people were arrested for wandering. But when it was overthrown by General Ibrahim Babangida, of course, the government freed people and said that there was nothing like that. What is wandering? There's freedom of movement insofar as people are not
involved in any
illegal activity. Why would you arrest somebody for moving about in the night? You say on suspicion of which suspicion? What suspicion? So you just find out that even the policies of the government are an abuse of human rights. They're in violation of human rights. And you find out that the Constitution says that government shall exist for the safety and well-being of the people. But that is not being observed. It's actually being observed, in the breach. And therefore, it is such a situation that, you find state agents who gleefully unleash sadistic, oppression of the people, repression of human rights. You find cases of even husband and wife having disagreements, and then either spouse who can, who has some influence with state agents would send them after the spouse and just get them, picked up and detained. What about cases of people accused of being members of one group or the other, and detained? For years, there is a case that just came up. A couple that has been detained for 3 years, after being accused by security agents of being members of the indigenous peoples of Biafra. In the north, you have people who have been arrested, accused of being spies or informants, or running errands for terrorists, or mere accusations.
Yes, but Emeka, I think it's very important. Of course, we do understand that there are tentacles to those that are used regularly, to abuse the rule of law, and of course, defaming and debasing, human rights in Nigeria. But we don't want to hold brief for some of them. Now, when it comes to security and ensuring the lives and properties of people are taken care of, this is a non-conventional war. It's a non-conventional war. You wouldn't even know, a security operative doesn't even know if the person he is approaching is good enough. So how do you think they can navigate this hoopla, knowing that they are not sure of the next man and what he has in his mind and what the next action is?
Of course, there are standard operating procedures for security agencies in Nigeria. If they try their best to follow these SOPs, of course there won't be problems. You can't justify, excuse me, detaining a couple on accusation of terrorism for 3 years. Look at the case of DJ Switch, and the NSAS. The ECOWAS court, ordered government to pay her and 2 other people compensation. Look at the case of the young lady who was detained, in the custody of the scrapped Special Anti-Robbery Squad. Of course, the government has been ordered to pay compensation to her. So the point is that, like, you can look at the theme: equality, dignity, and justice for all. Justice denied to one is justice denied to all. So what it means is that, the security agencies must clean up their acts. They need to know that when you mete out injustice to people because they are powerless against you, the wheel of justice will grind, against you one day. One day. So what you do is, when you perpetrate impunity, trample on people's rights, what you do is that you activate a vicious cycle. So talking about, getting to know terrorists, yes, the law says that people should not be detained beyond 48 hours. So why would you, for instance, keep somebody in detention for 3 years? What are you investigating? And then, yes, we know that, there are some parts of Nigeria that are in conflict, armed conflict and all of that. Yes, we commend the security agencies for, doing their best to deal with this situation, because even the insurgents commit, egregious human rights abuses, kidnap people, demand hefty ransoms. There have been allegations that where their hostages are not able to get people to muster their ransoms, that they are killed and their parts are harvested to be sold. So these are the things that constitute, horrendous human rights abuses. But you see, the security agencies should not be on the same page with, terrorists and insurgents, when it comes to human rights abuses. They should rather lead the way.
All right.
I know there have been commendable cases of, where, because, like, for instance, the fellow in Umuahia, it was the State Commissioner of Police, Abia State Commissioner of Police, who foiled his arrest. He said, for what? Why would you just come all the way from Abuja on the prompting of an individual to just come and pick? Is it so easy? Are you going to the market? You can't even go to the market and just pick a chicken. Why do we indulge in debasing human rights? You find, private individuals, when you can actually go to court if you have been libeled or defamed, you choose to use the police. Look at just yesterday, the Minister of Aviation. He made a very strong statement that the DSS, Department of State Service, has no right to search the luggage of travelers. That constitutes an abuse of human rights. So all of these things are a carryover from military rule. But they must stop. You cannot continue this way. That is why the world does not take us seriously. Because the world looks at, when you are going around looking for foreign investors, the world looks at how you treat your citizens. The world looks at how you observe human rights, the rule of law, how you obey court orders. The former administration of Muhammad Buhari was one of the worst in terms of abuse of human rights. That was a rogue government. Refused to obey court orders, even orders of the ECOWAS court. Kept people in detention. Of course, you even saw what Buhari himself said about the Southeast, about the Igbos, that they are a dot in a circle. How more horrendous, can somebody's mindset be?
All right. Yeah.
Simply because you are up in arms against the IPOB. Now, people are routinely, being kidnapped in different parts of the country. We expect the security agencies to deploy, much more than the same energy they use in going after, civilians, harmless civilians, to go after identified criminals. They should deploy that energy in the defense of people's rights.
All right. So speaking about the defense of people's rights, we cannot, say that without having a very strong element in the picture, which of course is the judiciary. You talked about if you have an issue or a rift with somebody, the best bet is to go to the court. But let's not forget, our judiciary has been seen from different quarters, has not been as a place that you can get to justice, because the theme here is equality, dignity, and justice for all. The judiciary, when you talk about this very three important words and phrase, it's missing when it comes to the Nigerian judiciary. So do you think that if we can get our judiciary working better, that all of this might be nipped in the bud?
Yeah, well, I would not totally condemn the judiciary, because I know there have been landmark cases. There have been cases where the judiciary actually demonstrated ample courage in defense of the people's rights. But a lot still needs to be done. Thankfully, the Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Kudirat Kekereekun, has spoken out strongly against, and advised judges to do something, to correct the negative perception Nigerians have about the judiciary. And then lawyers too, is the bar and the bench. Some acts that lawyers engage in, lawyers engaging in aid, in advancement of the abuse of human rights is really unbelievable. Even in the workplace, how do employers treat their employees? You owe people salaries, and it's nothing to you. A minimum wage act has been passed. How many employers, both in the public and private sectors, how many of them are keeping to 70,000 minimum wage? Then you look at working hours. How many are adhering to global standards concerning work hours? You look at working conditions. Workers are routinely injured, in places of work. Are there medical facilities to take care of them, to attend to emergencies? You talk about, do you know that there have been instances where lawyers actually just forged non-existent court judgments and use this thing, and use such against opponents of their perceived opponents of their clients? Forged court judgments, non-existent, that when you go to the court registry and make inquiries, there's nothing like that. But somebody is brandishing a judgment. From where?
Now, speaking about that, I think it's very fantastic that you mentioned the CJN, Kudirat Kekereekun, and how that she is ensuring that her area of expertise is sanitized. But let's not forget, as at the case between the FCT and Julius Baja, the land that Julius Baja, of course, acquired, and because it's not been developed yet, the minister of FCT took that land away from them and is busy trying to build the house for
which
the
was even inaugurated
by
CJN.
So when the CJN is saying that they want to sanitize the entire environment, how much of that can that go when she is, part of what should be sanitized?
Well, I'll look at it this way. I will not totally blame the CJN. Because I don't know what form of communication existed between her office and that of the Minister of the FCT before she accepted that invitation. I don't know whether her advice was sought before that, or the advice of the NJC, the National Judicial Council, whether it was sought before that land was appropriated, And now that has that puts the judiciary, such things put the judiciary in a tight position, because the judiciary is supposed to uphold the rule of law. Now, if Julius Berger goes to court to say, no, this property belongs to us, you cannot take it, and now there are judges there,
who of course are benefiting from.
You are putting the judiciary in a tight spot, and you see, state officials should also be mindful, of things like this. We should not bring our judiciary to ridicule. We should not expose our judges to, temptation. It is not right for the executive to be the ones buying cars for judges, building houses for judges. The judiciary should, as a matter of fact, be on first-line charge, so that the judiciary should prepare its own budget, for housing, for, I know, yes, the executive, executes the budget, but judiciary should actually handle, because judiciary has a bureaucracy. The National Judicial Council, the judiciary has a Judicial Service Commission, So the bureaucracy should be in charge of things like procurement and all that. And there is a law on public procurement in Nigeria. Those laws should be adhered to. Why you have a lot of corruption in the country is because laws on public procurement are not being adhered to. So, look at like what the EFCC chairman said. Very shocking revelation that, electrical contractors, there were electrical contractors, even though he didn't name them, who were using substandard materials, for critical national assets, and that was the cause of the constant collapse of National Grid. Well, I'll not hold brief for him whether that was true or false, because nobody has come out to confirm what he said. But there is a body, called Licensed Electricity Contractors Association of Nigeria, LECAN. Now, they are supposed to be brought into the loop when contracts are being considered, in the power sector. Then there is a law on public procurement. There is a tenders process. There are all of these things, advertisement for tenders. Now, when these processes are deliberately circumvented, those who do such things don't know that they are actually breaching human rights. They are violating human rights, including their own rights, including the rights of their family members. Because when the National Grid collapses, it denies people access to power. And you know what? Denying somebody of access to power is like denying the person the right to life. So if the power installations malfunction and kill people, you have denied them right to life. When there is no power, because substandard materials have been used in construction, in installing critical national assets, what are you doing? You are depriving the people of the right to dignity. Then, when you have things like Band A, Band B, and all of that, you are denying people access to equality, because before the law, every man is equal, every man, every woman is equal before the law. So, and the Nigerian Constitution forbids discrimination on the ground of status, sex, religion, ethnicity, and all of that. But when you now bring classifications, Band A, Band B, Band C, down to Band E, what you're doing is that you are, now creating classes, different classes of Nigerians who should, as of right, enjoy public utilities. Now that government has privatized the power sector, the same government is now creating classes, now entrenching, discrimination against constitutional provisions.
But of course, don't you think since it's beyond their purview, because of course they have privatized it to a profit-driven individual?
Then it should be market-driven. Don't now create Band A, Band B, Band C. Are you telling me Band A is on one side, Band B is on the other side? Are you telling me the people in Band A, are more deserving, of more regular power supply than those in Band B? The power should be available to everyone. Now, it should be such that if you do, it is what you pay for that you get. So that's why you see government has been talking about prepaid. So if people use prepaid meters, of course, what they pay for that they get. So it should be available to everybody. There should not be any classification. If you give some people 20 hours in a day, you give some people 4 hours in a day. What are you talking about? We're under the same sun. We are in the same, we face the same elements. We operate in the same society. We go to the same market. So why would you now give one person, privileges and deny the other privileges? It is unconstitutional. And the constitution is a grown norm for the society.
All right.
And therefore, you cannot do anything that violates the constitution. So, in a nutshell, what I'm saying is that the theme for this year is very, very important, because it highlights certain, the major challenges that are being faced today. You have, equality, the problem of equality. People being discriminated on the grounds of, who they are, the color of their skin, where they come from, or their gender. These things should be prohibited. You talk about dignity. Look at wars all over the place. How people are being treated, how weapons of war are being sold to nations that are bombing, people killing so many people, thousands of people, who had no part in igniting wars have become collateral victims of these wars.
Yes, beautiful. I think it's so great that you mentioned it. Just before we wind up for today, let's take this international for a beat. United States of America seem to be the fulcrum of democracy. If we talk about countries that should be at the forefront of respect for human rights, the United States should be at the forefront. But let's look at it from their foreign policies and countries that they work with and countries they do not work with. Ukraine versus Russia. The United States are for Ukraine as against Russia. And of course, saying that Vladimir Putin is disrespecting the rights of people and of course labeling him with all sorts. Now compare that to Israel versus Palestine. Benjamin Netanyahu almost doing the same thing Vladimir Putin is doing as against the Palestinians, but the United States are saying, oh, he's doing a very great job. So how do we balance all of this, knowing that the people we feel should be leading lights for respect for human rights are not really, doing that as we would expect them?
Yeah, thank you. You have abusers of human rights. You also have enablers of human rights abuses. And the United States, of course, has characteristically been playing a double game, in terms of certain conflicts. Look at the conflict in Ethiopia, in the Tigray province.
The Tigray, yeah.
Playing a double game, characteristically refusing to speak openly, to say, no, this should not be, allowed. It's the same thing in Israel. If the United States had a solid policy, for instance, it wouldn't have, the October 7, 2023 attacks, by Hamas on Israel, on some parts of Israel, may not have happened. But of course, like the allegation is that the United States, like some other leading nations of the world, allow these conflicts to proliferate so that it can sell its weapons. You can see the approval, the hasty approval given by the outgoing U.S. President, Joe Biden Jr., to Ukraine to use missiles. What is it? In order to create a kind of a fait accompli. Put the incoming, it has been perceived that he wants to put the incoming President Donald Trump in a tight corner. Because Donald Trump has said for him, there should be no wars anywhere, no conflicts anywhere. So that they will make sure that he will do his best to ensure that wars are quickly ended. But look at another front has been opened in Syria.
In Syria, yeah.
Already, some rebels in Syria are saying that they are going to overrun Israel. They are going to attack Israel and run it over. So, I think basically the world must do more to end conflicts, to avoid xenophobia, to avoid, to deal with racism, to deal with discrimination, exclusion, and to also deal with hateful rhetoric, like we have seen since the build-up and after, during and after the 2023 elections in Nigeria.
5th, yes.
The hateful rhetoric, the people who advance them have not let up. So we see that they've even advanced, in certain more dangerous frontiers. For instance, looking at a cultural exclusion, there's this controversy about a masquerade that some people wanted to bring from Nnewi in Anambra State to Lagos for an Igbo festival. And, even though it has not been officially confirmed, but there is some story, there's some story moving about, on the internet that the commissioner of police, had to call some Igbo leaders to say no, that the masquerade, because it has some mythical prowess and all of that, will not be allowed to Lagos because it would conflict with the cultural beliefs of the people. All of these things.
But don't you think it makes sense?
Which sense?
Because your rights, shouldn't step on my rights, because we're talking about human rights and respect.
You are trying to trample on the right of this one. Is culture.
Equality.
What will a masquerader do? If a masquerader steps out of line, you arrest his handlers now and you stop the masquerader, not creating unnecessary apprehension, which exists in the minds of a few people. We've seen masqueraders now all over the place doing your festival and other festivals here and there. We've seen different masqueraders in Lagos. So what is this apprehension about? What it demands is this hateful rhetoric has to stop. The idea that one nondescript fellow, can just sit in one corner and then now wake up and say, oh, Igbos must leave Lagos. Oh, you people should go away. Go back to your town. Go back to your village. We ought to by now have advanced beyond such thinking. Because Nigeria ought to practice inclusive democracy. The Constitution allows you to live freely anywhere, in any part of the country, to own property, to live freely, pursue economic activities, in any part of the country. But we have to work together as Nigerians to entrench, equality, to make sure that we're all equal. There should be no discrimination against anybody. Recently one journalist came out and said that Igbos don't sell lands and all that. And it's falsehood. 22 years ago, the same person wrote the same thing in a national newspaper and he was upbraided. He has still continued that such a person ought to be called in for questioning by the security agencies. Because there is one problem with such dangerous rhetoric, such hateful rhetoric. It's dangerous. It might look innocuous until people, it begins to develop a believability index that now rises to a point that ignites. Look at like what happened in the Rwanda genocide and all of these things. The question is this: why should people? What do they gain from, trying to deepen, the division between us? Why not work, for a society where everybody lives happily? By the way, if you go out on the streets, Nigerians don't have problems with each other.
Definitely.
But it's politicians and their enablers who try to create fearful scenarios because they want to capture power, just for state capture. Beyond that, people don't have any problem with their neighbors. So we have to make sure that people who, beyond just celebrating the International Human Rights Day, we must make sure that people who make it, a habit, to enable, and entrench impunity, they must be stopped in their tracks.
Very true.
We must promote inclusivity. We must promote the dignity of man. We must promote equality, and we must promote justice for all. That way, we can be seen as a society, as a nation that deserves global respect.
Very, very true. We cannot say that enough. Those who make hatred a doctrine and as part of their lives, I think it's very important we all understand that no one is an island. I need you, you need me. I have my choices, you have your choices. I have whatever taste I want, and you should have yours. But let's always find a meeting ground to make that possible for all of us. It takes two to tango. Of course, with equality, dignity, and justice for all, it can only be possible. Thank you so very much, Emeka Madnago.
Thank you very much
For being part of our show today. And also thank you for making the picture complete. We truly do appreciate you. But please do well to visit us. You can always find and reach us at enterprisetvnews.com. You may also like, comment, and follow us on all our social media platforms at Enterprise TV7. I am Henry Igwebike. I'll see you next time on Homo Politicus. Thank you for watching and bye-bye.